butterfly, please tell me again I'm gonna be all right.
Wonderful. And you know, it is one of my favorite images. The caterpillar turning into the butterfly is, it's kind of what the spiritual path is all about, is it not? We come out of where we think we need to be, which is in crawling, and suddenly one day we turn into something beautiful and radiant that can fly. And that's what spiritual living teaches us, I believe. So my series of messages this winter were based on that fear you were singing about, Michelle, that fear of what I saw happening in the world, and an intense desire to be a part of the consciousness of the healing of our planet. And I'll tell you, the journey's been great. What I have found is that there's so much good news going on in the world. There are millions of people working to heal our planet, to fix the consciousness that got us to where we are, and to bring us to a level of healing. And I think before that I didn't know how much was actually going on. Thousands and thousands and thousands of organizations, some of them just a few people, and some of them are enormous, and they're kind of acting like the immune system of humanity, the immune system of the very earth itself. Like an immune system in the body does, it rises up when something is going wrong, and it works in tandem with all of its parts to make it well. So I'm a part of the earth immune system, and I'm loving that. I'm just loving that image, part of the growth and development of our planet. That we have not gone to a point where we can change it with consciousness. This is what our teaching tells us, that consciousness is everything. Science tells us that quantum leaps are the way evolution moves forward. So you put those two things together, and I believe that if I correct the areas in my own heart and mind that continue to cling to old ways, that I can be a part of an actual change and shift and quantum leap for the good. So the series is called The 10 New Commandments for a World That Works for Everyone. And these are my commandments so far. Thou shalt honor the waters of the earth. Thou shalt bless the air you breathe. Thou shalt tend the earth garden. Thou shalt love animals as thyself. And today's commandment is thou shalt practice sufficiency. So what does that mean? Well, as you know, sufficiency means there's enough. It means that we have sufficient for our needs, that which we require to be healthy, happy, and whole. Many people, including myself for many, many years, practice insufficiency. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough food, not enough, well, you can pretty well fill in the blank with whatever you can imagine to put in there. It's a pretty pernicious belief, and it can infect all parts of our lives. Has anyone ever experienced that? Yeah, it kind of creates a hole inside of ourselves that's impossible to fill. And we try to shop our way out of it, we try to eat our way out of it, or drink our way out of it, or whatever. Again, you can pretty much fill in the blank, work our way out of it. And yet, by nature, it's a hole that cannot be filled, because the belief underlying it is there's not enough. sufficiency. Thou shalt practice sufficiency. Belief in insufficiency goes back a long way. A long, long way. I remember years ago I read a novel by Daniel Quinn. Anybody familiar with his work? Ishmael and My Ishmael. Yeah, I've seen some hands and some nods. His novels are mind-bending. Absolutely blew me out of one paradigm and into going, what the heck just happened to me? And in one of those books, he reinterpreted the story of the Garden of Eden, and I'm going to try to remember to the best of my ability how that went. He did it in a most interesting way. So you'll remember from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the cattle, and over all the wild beasts of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. That rib thing? That rib thing happens in another chapter. I think they must have tacked that on. So I'm going with this one. So Adam and Eve are in this beautiful garden. They're naked as jaybirds, eating the fruit from the tree, and they're happy as they can be. But there's one tree they're not supposed to eat from. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You translate that, thou shalt not embody the notion of duality. Because once we embody and take a reality in duality, good or evil, this or that, we begin the long, tortured process of separating ourselves from each other and from God. Now I think, well, let me finish my story first. So there they are. Of course they eat the fruit of the tree of good and evil. It's there. It's there. What are they going to do? And so God gets mad, and when he busts Adam, he says, she made me do it. And when he busts Eve, she says, the snake made me do it. And so God expels them from the garden, creating separation between humans and God. And he makes them put clothes on. And he says the part of the punishment for Eve is that she shall be dominated by her husband. And part of the punishment for Adam is that he's going to have to toil in the fields for a living. Well, Daniel Quinn calls that the very moment when humankind moved from hunter-gatherers to an agrarian farm system. And it was the moment in that knowledge of good and evil when force began to be the dominant thing on the planet. That the strong could dominate the weak, and they could do so by locking up the food supply. Isn't that an interesting idea? That story actually harkens back to a major evolutionary point in humankind. We went from enjoying the garden and picking our food to having to toil in the fields for it. So what happened? God changed. Consciousness changed. And this idea came into human beings of being this or that, male and female, strong and weak. And you know the rest of the story. It's been going on for a long, long, long time since then. The biggest and the strongest can rule over the weak. So I've been reading this wonderful book by Charles Eisenstein called A More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And he writes, "Scarcity is one of the defining features of modern life. Around the world, 1 in 5 children suffers from hunger. We fight wars over scarce resources such as oil. We have depleted the oceans of fish and the ground of clean water. Worldwide, people and governments are cutting back, making do with less because of a scarcity of money. Few would deny that we live in an era of scarce resources. Many would say it is dangerous to imagine otherwise. On the other hand, it's not hard to see that most of this scarcity is artificial. Consider food scarcity. Vast amounts, as much as 50% of production by some estimates, is wasted in the developing world. Vast areas of land are devoted to producing ethanol. Vaster areas still are devoted to America's #1 cultivated species, lawn grass. Meanwhile, land that is devoted to food production is typically farmed by chemical-insensitive, machine-dependent methods that are actually less productive than labor-intensive organic agriculture and permaculture." It's a long quote. Bear with me. Similarly, scarcity of natural resources is also an artifact of our system. Not only are our production methods wasteful, but much of what is produced does little to further the human well-being. Technologies of conservation, recycling, and renewables languish undeveloped. Without any real sacrifice, we could live in a world of abundance. He goes on. Even wealth offers no escape from the perception of scarcity. In 2011, a 2011 study of the super wealthy at Boston College's Center on Wealth and Philanthropy surveyed attitudes toward wealth among households with a net worth of, get this, $25 million or more. The average of the surveyed was $78 million in assets. Amazingly, when asked whether they experienced financial security, what do you think their answer was? No! What would make you feel financially secure? On average, the answer was 25% more. Wow. Wow. If someone with $78 million in assets can experience scarcity, it obviously is not about money. It's about something much deeper than economic inequality. The roots are in our story of the world. I know what you're thinking. If I had $78 million in the bank, I would not have a scarcity mentality. And maybe you wouldn't. And maybe you wouldn't. But if you have the mistaken identity, or the mistaken idea that you are somehow separate from your source, from the creative genius that made you, and if you somehow believe that you are separate from each other, it's going to come out in another way. You're going to shop too much, work too much, drink too much, gamble too much, blah, 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 blah. I've done them all. I've done them all. Americans consume at a rate of about 10% higher than Europeans and 100% higher than people who live in Bangladesh. Wow. What is that about? Do we somehow believe that we are entitled to consume that much more food, water, plastic, gasoline, because we invented some of that? I don't know. Because the world is lined up to do consumerism. If everybody did it the way we did, wow, where would we be? Where would we be? We are one of the wealthiest nations in the world. We have one of the best lifestyles in the world, and we are also the most obese, debt-ridden, and unhappy people on the planet. Wow. It's not our fault. Don't go there. Don't go there. You know, we saw a wonderful film Friday night called Project Happiness. And how many were there? I know we had a full house. It was great. It was a good movie about a bunch of high school kids who set out to answer the question, what makes us happy? And they, some of them had really horrific lives. They were, abused kids and lots of things in their personal lives. But they got together as a class and they went to talk with, first they saw George Lucas, and then they went to talk to Richard Gere, and then they went to talk to the Dalai Lama, asking this question, what makes us happy? And they got together with some kids from Nigeria and some kids from Tibet, and they went to India to meet with the Dalai Lama. And when they asked the Dalai Lama, who's the most spiritual guy they could think of, what makes us happy? In his beautiful way, he said, me? I don't know. And everybody laughed. And it was in that laughing, that undefended laughter, that they found their answers, really, That when we let down our guard and when we're kind to each other and when we live with compassion and we have enough food and we have enough shelter and we have enough clothing, oh man, when people love us enough, when we have high enough self-esteem, what more could we possibly want? Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to drive a certain car or live in a certain place. I'm not saying we should all go back to, the very, very basics. But what I am saying is that when we find out what it really takes to make us happy, it's a lot simpler than I ever imagined. We're going to show that movie on the big screen here someday. It was beautiful, beautiful film. So believing in sufficiency does take practice. First, we have to identify those places inside where we feel a deficiency. Do I feel, I don't know, some of you, we've grown up with that idea that not only is there not enough, but I'm not enough. And that, I think, is the one that creates the biggest, deepest, darkest, unfillable hole. Well, that's nonsense. It's nonsense. God loves us all the same. There is no better than or less than. So it's in here. It's in here. We have to do that excavation work and find out and bring into the light what it is that we believe that is not serving us. And if it is that I am somehow deficient, or that if I don't have enough, or whatever it is, when we bring that out into the light and really ask about it, think about it. There are times when we all worry we don't have enough money. But if you stop and really breathe into that question and ask, do I have enough to meet this moment? The answer is always yes. Do I have enough friends? Again, when you really look at that and just open your eyes to who's sitting next to you, that you can call friend, the answer is yes. There is no real deficiency in our lives when examined. It is all belief and feeling behind it. I do my best to practice what I call radical sufficiency. My motto is, I have enough no matter what. I have enough no matter what. I am enough no matter what. so that even when my eyes tell me, my pocketbook tells me, my cupboards tell me differently, I have enough no matter what. And you know what happens when you focus on something? It grows. There is not a place in my life where there is a deficiency when I practice radical sufficiency. In fact, I have plenty. I have what I have to call abundance. Not because I have $1 million, $78 million in the bank, but because I have plenty. I have enough. And that's part of the teaching here, is that there's nothing. God has one characteristic above every other, and that is God always says yes. So let's give God a bigger yes to say yes to be open to receive from. The idea grows. That what I'm calling sufficiency is true abundance. That my faith in being taken care of by this creative genius that made me grows every time I claim sufficiency. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Though we find our faith as small as a grain of mustard seed, it will be sufficient unto our needs. As our faith grows through definite and constant practice, it will do more than satisfy simply our needs. It will bring forth that which is divine within ourselves. It will bring forth hidden talents which have been lying dormant. It will cause us never again to feel insecure, lonely, or separate. For such faith will make us whole. And when we are whole, the world is whole." So let's take that into prayer. I'm thinking about the beautiful, beautiful phrase of Howard Thurman as I move into that soul space when Howard Thurman says, "Keep before me my moments of high resolve." Let me remember this. Let me remember this lesson, that no matter what, there is always sufficiency. And so I turn to that divine glow from within that I call my connection to Source. That place, that divine person that is all things everywhere. That divine nature that is underlying all of the planet, all of the universe, all of each other. The divine one that I am a part of. The whole, complete spirit that is all power, all presence, all joy, love, abundance, order, harmony, all of that. That continues out of itself to make and remake the universe and the earth, my body, my life. The divine yes that comes only from within. No, that's not true. I can see it from without, too. I can see it in the eyes of people I meet. I can see it in experiences that say yes back to me. And so I know that my life is a reflection of that divine source. And that's true for every single person everywhere. The source from within projects that which is without. So I profess my commitment to cleaning it up. Wherever it needs cleaning, I do it. I know that when I clean up, that means going inside and giving up my precious beliefs that no longer serve myself or the world or each other. I profess my commitment to kindness to one another, to helping where I'm needed, to giving where it's needed, to becoming a person who practices sufficiency and sees it everywhere in the world. I claim that for every person here, every person everywhere. Sufficiency, enough, plenty. For I know that in this focus, I actually do command the world to come back to me in a different form, a form that reflects sufficiency, plenty, abundance, more joy, more kindness, more love. And I'm so grateful for this knowing. I'm so grateful for this teaching, for this community, and for this world. I'm so grateful.